Hello, this is the TradeSite U.S. stocks and futures market preview and domestic economic data roadmap for the week beginning Monday, the 31st of December 2018, ending Friday, the 4th of January 2019. Happy New Year. Thanks for everybody for being with us all this year. It's been a great year here at TradeSite. We will be posting our year-end summaries for stocks, futures, and Forex based on our calls for the year. Obviously, all three asset classes did very well for us, and we'll have our results posted sometime later next week. First the November and December numbers, and then the total numbers for the year. Here's a look at the VIX. Actually, let's start where we usually start on the ES. This is the front month futures contract of the ES. Got a little bounce back and reversal the other day here later in the week, and then closed right under that 10-day moving average. Obviously, nothing here pretty. A lot of it driven by the government shutdown, but you've got all the tariff issues and everything else as well. So just not pretty. Let's look at crude oil up 51 cents to 45.12. This thing had a 13 buy signal just over a week ago, and so far has held that level. Gold up $2.30. This has been on the rise for the first time in a while. I'm up to highs for the last 6 months, closing out the year. Pretty much even for the year, but up for the last 6 months. S&P cash lost all of 3 points on Friday, as expected. Nobody really around. NASDAQ 100 also down just 3 points, so no big deal. SOX up 7. The biotechs were down 2.68. Again, they all look fairly similar at this point. Russell 2000 actually up 6 points, still under that 10-day moving average. The VIX lost $1.62. Remember, this thing hit as high as 36 during the week. Really need to be over 40 usually before you see a true bottom in the market. That's how we knew the bottom wasn't in yet, because even in the decline in October and November, as we keep pointing out, we never got the VIX over 28. You did in February, and it wasn't as much of a decline. So we haven't really had that panic sell-off yet, and so it probably means the bottom's not in still at this point, in my opinion. Trend closes at 1.72. The 10-day moving average is 1.22. NASDAQ volume was only 2.2 billion shares on Friday. That's not surprising. Lowest of the week, basically, not including the Christmas Eve half day, just because nobody's around at this point. And they won't be on Monday either. Advanced decline ratio on the NASDAQ, kind of meaningless given the number of people trading, but a plus 1175 on the New York, plus 849. Google loses 6.22. That's an inverted cup on Google. That is not pretty if that thing breaks the lows. Apple up all of 8 cents. Boy, this thing sold off, hasn't it? Down from 230 to 150-ish, so down 80 points on them. It's 33% on Apple. Netflix up 51 cents. This thing also down quite a bit over the last couple of months. Amazon up 16.38. Tesla up 17.74. This thing is holding on for the year, basically even for the year. It's been a real flat year for Tesla, which is, considering everybody else, is probably a good thing. Facebook down $1.32. This one obviously almost down in half from where it was. Goldman Sachs loses 238. There's been nothing positive here in Goldman Sachs. It's almost interesting to look at the weekly chart if you haven't done it on Goldman Sachs lately. Look at this. Now you can see back to late 2014 or even middle of 2014. That's where we're at. So, 4 years plus later, and the stock is even. That's Goldman Sachs of all stocks. It's kind of a big deal in my opinion. TLT, the 20-year bond ETF, up $1.01. The Dow Jones lost 76 points on the session. All right, in terms of, let's look at the interweek action. It's a little weird because markets were closed on Tuesday for Christmas, and they had a half day on Monday, for Christmas Eve. So if I do 10-minute charts so you can see the week, really this right here is the week. There's the half day on Monday. Small gap down and went a little lower, closed at the lows of the week. Tuesday gapped up, didn't quite fill the gap, then went higher. I'm sorry, that's Wednesday. Tuesday were closed. Wednesday gapped down, started to go lower. We were even for the week at that point, and then rallied late in the day on Thursday. That was kind of the surprise. Friday gapped up, filled, tried to go higher, got a 13 sell signal and sold off, and basically even for the day. NASDAQ side, again, here's the week right here. Looks about the same. So we gained a little bit for the week after selling off the last few weeks, but overall, not much to brag about, obviously. All right. So now, in terms of economic data coming out in the week ahead, Monday, there's no data, even though it's a full day. Now, keep in mind, even though it's New Year's Eve and it's wedged between the weekend and New Year's Day, the last trading day of the year by rule has to be a full trading day. Probably not necessary in this world anymore, but it used to be about processing end-of-year tax orders and how much time that took. So it's open for the full day. Nobody's going to be around. Tuesday, markets are closed, obviously, And then the week starts. You get 3 whole days to start the year out. And we'll talk more about that in the year-end preview. But as usual, the way we start the year is typically if the first 3 days of the year are one direction, the rest of the month of January is the other direction. That happens more often than not. So here's a look at the data coming out still. Got final manufacturing PMI on Wednesday. We got challenger job cuts, ADP non-farm employment change, and the weekly initial and continuing jobless claim numbers on Thursday, plus ISM manufacturing PMI and prices, and then later in the day, total vehicle sales. Friday is the big one. We got the unemployment rate to close out the year. Final services PMI numbers. We got the Fed chair speaking, natty gas, and crude oil inventories on Friday since the markets were closed on Thursday. So that's how we wrap up or start off the year for the most part. And we will be around. There won't be any calls to make in the report for stocks on Wednesday just because all the scans are going to be messed up by all these holidays. So the actual stock pick calls back to normal will start on Thursday. But we will be trading Wednesday. We'll call it from the room. Charts, as usual, brought to you by eSignal. If you've not yet taken a trial of our services, feel free to do so. We will help you out for a couple of weeks. Have a great trading next week. Have a great New Year.